Dear friends, in this session, we are going to understand the steps involved in starting a business venture. Introduction to the steps involved in starting a business venture. A startup business venture is one which is created by an entrepreneur himself. A startup gives the entrepreneur greater freedom in selecting goods or services, location, facilities, equipments, suppliers, and professional services. Thus, identifying the business opportunity, entrepreneur has to commission this concept. He or she has to work on the proposal with the issues involved in selection of a proper site for locating the unit, availing all clearances, analyzing the feasibility of finance, societal reaction, and potential market for the product or services of the proposed unit. Let's understand the various steps involved in starting a business venture. First one is that identification of a product or a service, a product which you want to launch in a market. You have to identify that product before identifying any other steps. Next, identification of location. Next, project formulation. Decisions on form of ownership, completion of legal formalities, arranging for infrastructure, preparation of project report, last but not the least, applying and obtaining financial assistance. So in this session, we will be discussing more about the first two steps of starting a business venture, and the remaining steps we'll be discussing in the upcoming sessions. Identification of product or services. An entrepreneur is free to select any product which he thinks that the product is profitable and viable from market point of view. If you are an entrepreneur, you will be having multiple opportunity to select the best product or services which you want to sell in a market or render a service. If the entrepreneur selects and develops a particular product, he has to consider the dimensions like technological know-how, financial resources, a rough estimate of demand, customer satisfaction, position of competitors, interest of dealers, infrastructure facilities, need for efficiency, and socio-economic conditions prevailing in the society, etc., and collected information about them. When you have a multiple opportunities, options of product and services which you want to sell in a market or render in a market, you are not going to immediately start with that. You have to identify various aspects relating to that product and services. That could be anything that we have discussed in our previous sessions, that is in evaluation of business environment, in that you would have understood the concept of analysis of internal and external environment, the factors which are influencing them. In the same way, when you are selecting any product or services, you have to analyze, identify, and calculate, determine the resources, a rough estimate of demand, customer satisfaction, competitors. They are the most important thing which you need to consider, along with the dealers, infrastructure facilities, etc. When you consider all these, next is to identification of location. Selecting a place to locate the proposed unit is a real challenge to an entrepreneur. Yes, now you have identified a product, you are ready with a product. That could be any product. For example, let's take you want to start a business which manufactures some beverages like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or something. Where would you like to locate your factory? Is it possible that you locate it in between a city? It will be costly for you, and it is not such useful also, because the resources which is majorly important for the production of any kind of beverages is like water and other resources. If you start a business in a major cities, you have to pay a lot for the location. That includes the rent or the building or other infrastructure. Along with that, whatever you have to pay for the human resource and the transportation, everything become costlier for you. And when it becomes costlier for you, you will start increasing the price of the product. Later, it will become difficult for you to sustain in a market with the high prices. So it is most important when you are locating your business, you have to select a place which is so viable and feasible to you, which gives you a good economic returns, which can help you in such a way that you can reduce your cost of production. It is said that good location is half sold. If the proposed unit is located in a place which satisfies all location needs, the unit will have smooth sale. It includes any nation, state, district, taluk, etc. Let's see what are the things we have to consider in selection of a location. First one is that availability of a sufficient space. If you want to establish a large scale industry, you may need a large space. But if you want to start with a small business, yes, small space is also enough for you. Where would you find a large space to establish your business? There might be somewhere away from a city area. That could be somewhere in a rural or underdeveloped area. Next is that easy availability of a labor. Labor plays a major role in establishing a business, in running of a business and sustaining of a business. Though you have everything, you have machineries, you have money, you have every facility, but still labor are very much important for your business. A skilled labor for a better business operations, and the laborers who can work for you at a cheaper rate, or availability of these type of labors is very much important. When you are selecting any location, you have to consider their availability. Next, availability of raw material at reasonable price. If you are starting your business in a city or a developed area, the raw material may cost you high. So if you're starting your business somewhere in an underdeveloped area, the raw material could be available at a cheaper rate. So it is very much important to identify the reasonable prices for a raw material when you are selecting a location. Next, availability of industrial fuel and its supply. Yes, we can observe that the industrial fuel and its supply is very much available in a developed area when compared to a underdeveloped area. But it also depends on what the nature of business you are doing. Is it very much important that you should have a 24/7 industrial fuel and its supply? If you very much require it, you have to establish a business somewhere nearer to a place where you get this facility. Availability of transport facility. Transport facilities plays an important role in a business establishment. If there is no proper transportation, you may have to face some problems relating to transportation of materials for production, transportation of people for work, transportation of produced product from your point to the customers. Until it reaches the customers, it has to go through various activities. One of those activities is transportation. If there is no proper transportation facility, there will be lack of, and there will be unproductive business activities. Availability of power and degree of dependability of its supply. Power here means electricity. Availability of electricity and the degree of dependability of its supply is very much important. If your business is dependent on electricity and you are dependent on manufacturing and using a machineries which needed the power and electricity, then it is like you have to establish your business somewhere where the utility flow is high, and without any discontinuation you can establish your business operations. Water supply as per the requirements. In any business organization, whether it is a service rate oriented or a goods oriented, it is very much important to have a water. That could be for drinking purpose, that could be for sanitization purpose, that could be for factory manufacturing purpose, or any other things. If you think about the Coca-Cola and Pepsi companies, the major resource for their manufacturing product is that water. That's why they have established their businesses near the where the availability of water is more. If there is no requirement of a water, it is not that we do not require a water at all, but it also important that how much water is required for your business. So you have to consider that aspects when you are selecting a location. Next, these are few of the factors to be considered when selecting a location which you are seeing in this image. In that they are telling that law and order situation, availability of infrastructure facility, good industrial relations, availability of skilled workforce, social infrastructure, investors, friendly attitude, nearness to market, nearness to source of raw materials, supporting industry and services, must meet safety requirements. All these things which we have to consider during the establishment of our plan, what relating to a location establishment. Here we can see on our left side facilities available for education, health, recreation, shopping, religious and social life, and professional services are also to be considered when selecting a location. Laws and regulation conducive for establishing a business unit. You might have heard that in income tax, they say that if you are establishing a business in a small economic zone, that is where the rural areas or area which is underdeveloped, if you establish your factory in those kind of areas, you will be given with an option not to pay income tax, that is tax of on your profit, business profits for next 5 years. You will get a tax slab, tax concession in that. Sorry, not tax slab, that's tax concession in that. So that is the kind of benefits you get if you establish your business in a small economic zone. You have to consider the incentives or the benefits the government is offering you, or any laws and regulations. Government will be having some kind of laws and regulations relating to environment or anything else. You shouldn't establish your business plan in such a way where it will be harmful for the people living around. Like if you're establishing a factory which is associated with polluting the water, or polluting the air, or polluting some kind of soil, etc., that will be harmful and against the law and regulations of the country. So it is very much important to consider that also. Next, climatic condition of the area. Climatic condition plays a very much important role. You might have seen that in agriculture, it is a very important. In agriculture, if you are producing some sort of plants, you have to consider the climate. There, if you are producing something without expecting, without understanding the climatic conditions, the weather of the some specific location, then you have to face a lot of losses. The tax incentive available in that locality. The example which I gave you, that if you are establishing your business in somewhere in a small economic zones, like in our Bangalore, we have multiple small economic zones. Why? The IT industries are much established in a Whitefield Electronic City in such a kind of areas are because those are small economic zones, and the industries which are established in those areas will get some tax benefits, tax incentives. Next is nearness to the market. Market is like where you are buying the material for production and where you are selling your produced product output. So it is very much important that along with the transportation, the nearness to market is good. If there is no nearness, the time consumption will be more. The operating cycle of your working capital will be expanded. Unnecessarily, you have to wait for until your product gets sold, or you have to wait until you receive your materials to your plant location. So to avoid all these issues, you have to evaluate the nearness to the market of the plant location. Next, provisions for disposal of waste. In a law and regulation, I told you people should be very careful when you are doing any business activities which may be harmful for our environment. In the same way, if you are establishing a big factory beside of a river, and whatever the wastages coming out of that factory, you are dumping those into some river or some spacious area which may harmful to the people who are living around, that will not be entertained. So here you have to consider, when you are establishing a factory or a service center, you have to see that whatever the waste or the disposals come out of your business unit should be thrown and dumped in a proper way. So that should be nearer to this waste disposal locations. So next, cheap power supply. So as I told you that if you are establishing your plant somewhere in a city, the cost of a power will also be higher. If you are establishing those plant somewhere in a out of city or somewhere nearer to city, and there you may find a moderate to cheap power supply cost. So it is very much important to avoid any kind of increase in cost of goods. All these things, all these factors, when you consider, these things will help you in establishing and growing a proper business operations and sustaining a market. So when you consider these things, it will ultimately make you to reduce the cost of production and make a good profit. Along with that, you can beat your customers. So hoping that you people have understood these concepts, we'll discuss the other steps of establishing a business venture in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.